Good morning. We are back from recess. The time is 9 a.m. Today is Thursday, August 25th, 2016. This is day 2 of the Physical Therapy Board of California. We're meeting in the Department of Consumer Affairs hearing room located at 2005 Evergreen Street in Sacramento. Could we please have roll call?
Katarina Ellaby,
Present.
Alicia Urbana Amin,
Here.
Deborah Alvizo,
Present.
Jesus Dominguez,
Present.
Daniel Drummer,
Present.
Tanya McMillian,
Here.
TJ Watkins.
Yeah.
All board members are present and the board has a quorum.
Thank you, Brooke. Our next order of business today is agenda item number 16, the presentation of services provided by the Division of Investigation. And the board members are going to move into the audience so we can view the presentation.
Good morning, board members. My name is Rex Qbert. I'm the Northern Area Commander for the Division of Investigation with the Department of Consumer Affairs. And with me is my counterpart, Stephanie Whitley.
I am the Supervising Investigator over our Enforcement Support Unit, and I'll tell you more about that when we get going.
So we've been asked to come and do a presentation about the Division of Investigation and kind of how we're integrated within the Department of Consumer Affairs and the services we provide for your board as well as all the other boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs.
We're a little jaundice. That's okay. It's
It'll
easier in the
warm up.
dark. It'll warm up.
So as an overview, we're all under the Department of Consumer Affairs, and there's boards, committees, and commissions and bureaus that fall under the Department of Consumer Affairs for all the various licensing entities. And then the Division of Investigation was established in 1961 to help provide law enforcement and investigative services for all the boards and bureaus that needed, either law enforcement support for criminal investigations as well as investigations for the administrative violations and the prosecution, of any of those violations. And our mission is to provide law enforcement investigative services in order to protect the consumers and licensees by efficient and effective enforcing laws, regulations, and professional standards.
So just to point out, so for you folks, probably POST, I don't know how familiar you are with POST. So when we talk about a law enforcement agency, what does that mean, right? So all law enforcement, which is your locals, your police departments, your sheriff's departments, and then you have, these law enforcement agencies that are state. So you have like Department of Insurance has their law enforcement arm. DMV has their law enforcement arm. We are all under the umbrella and regulated by POST, which is the California Peace Officers Standards of Training. So under POST, there is all these requirements, kind of like you folks with like your continuing education credits and what you have to do to keep your license active. That's what we have to do to be able to stay active as peace officers in a law enforcement agency. So we all have attended a police academy. We all are trained in defensive tactics, arrest and control. We all carry firearms. So that means every quarter we have to qualify with our firearms. We have to have training in arrest and control. So that's kind of our process and why we are a law enforcement agency. So we are no different, although we're plain clothes than the law enforcement officers you see in uniforms, on the street. And I just want to point this out. This is I like to point out in our mission that we too have an obligation to protect our licensees, right? Because we know during the complaint process, anybody can file a complaint. And I have met I'm not going to compare it to Rex because Rex has been here too long, but I have been an investigator for 15 years and I have met a lot of good licensees. And just because a complaint is filed does not necessarily mean that licensee is in the wrong. So we have the obligation to gather the information, gather facts to either disprove or prove the allegations at hand. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I've been with the division 23 years, just going on 23 years.
He always says that. You're no good to deliver any sort of spiel with because you always, steal the spotlight.
Always trying to show her up.
Yeah.
So the organization of the division specifically, we have a chief of the division, which our chief is David Chris, and he sends his apologies. He wasn't able to come today and present with us. And then there's 4 major sections of the division. The Investigation and Enforcement Unit is basically the original division of investigation that was formed. We currently have 7 field offices. I have 2 teams in Sacramento, so 8 teams total throughout the state. I have a counterpart, Danny Elias. He's the Southern Area Commander, and he has all the 4 offices down in Southern California, and then I have all the 4 offices up in Northern California. And an office is comprised of approximately 5 investigators, a supervising investigator, and an office technician that processes everything for that office. In July of 2014, the investigators that were under the medical board were brought over and transferred and made as a unit, the Health Quality Investigations Unit under the Division of Investigation. They essentially have the same role that they had when they were under medical board, providing investigative services specifically for medical board and several allied health agencies that were under their jurisdiction over there. There is one other peace officer investigative unit that is part of the dental board that is still part of their investigators are under the dental board, and they're in this building down the hall. And they still remain over there, but they perform essential functions just for the dental board. The Health Quality Investigations Unit has 13 field offices spread out throughout the state as well.
So here I am. Like I said, I am the supervising investigator over our enforcement support unit. My primary function is to be, number one, the central point of contact for all of our boards and bureaus at DCA. So I have the great pleasure of working weekly with your staff, who are amazing, by the way. And so if, we have something unusual going on, if they get a subsequent arrest notification and are needing that police report right away and are having trouble, then we can back them up and support them to get that information as fast as we can. So that is a constant communication with your board and myself and individuals in my unit. So on top of that, we also intake all the cases. So from all the clients, the cases come centrally into my unit. They're screened, they're processed. Then we determine where that case shall go, either up and down the state, or it could remain in my unit. I do have investigative staff and analysts that could handle some requests and needs. Oh, outreach. Sorry. Yes, outreach. And then part of another part is outreach. So it is going out, meeting with board staff, talking about, doing presentations to the boards. It's about if there's any kind of creative enforcement support that the staff needs. That's not a traditional DFI, like it's not a case that needs to be done, but if there is like a training need for staff, if there is a training need for maybe our staff, then that's the kind of role that my unit also takes on. And then we have a special operations unit, and they're tasked with a totally different set of responsibilities. And they do internal affairs for staff of the Department of Consumer Affairs. So they handle that. They handle backgrounds for our sworn staff at the Division of Investigation. And they also have some unique skills in the computer forensics, and they handle all the workplace violence for the department. On top of, they do training, but we're talking about training like our firearms and our defensive tactics for our peace officers. Those are great slides, Rex. You did a fantastic job with the visuals. So here's a breakdown of the clients between the traditional IEU side and, like Rex was saying, on the health quality enforcement unit. So you could see the number of boards and bureaus that we help provide services for in our unit, which is a lot, but it's also a very enjoyable job as an investigator, because look at the variety we get to work. And then the health quality investigative unit handles the medical board, physician assistant, podiatry, and then they traditionally do psychology and osteopathic medical board. However, the IEU side is helping them out with those investigations at this time.
The reason we're helping them at this point is they have a high vacancy rate. And so until they can fill those positions and get staffing levels up to a manageable level, the caseload has been overwhelming for them. And so these boards have agreed to come over and have our investigators handle those investigations.
Sorry, why again are there separate investigative units for, why are they there?
Why is this?
Yeah.
Historically, when the division was established in 1961, it was just one division, and the boards, and actually we had a lot of inspectors under the division for like barbering and cosmetology and structural pest control, as well as handling all the types of investigations for every board. In the 70s, the medical board, a portion of the division's investigators were separated and placed under the medical board, just like they were placed under the dental board as well. At that time, they had decided that they needed some more focused attention on the investigations. I don't know the legislative background of why that transition took place, but over the years, the legislators decided, with the case aging issues and other issues, they decided to reconsolidate back the investigators back under the Division of Investigation, just structurally for reporting purposes. It helps with training because we're doing the same type of training and it uniforms our training, but they still handle those specific investigations for those boards. And they also have vertical enforcement, which is where the DAG, the Deputy Attorney General's office, on the health quality enforcement side of the AG's office, they work closer and participate during the investigation with the investigators and the board, the medical board, during the conducting of those investigations. Where on our side, we have both 8 boards that have HQE DAGs, like you guys, all your disciplinary actions go through the HQE side of the AG's office. But we have a lot of boards that also have licensing DAGs. That's another unit over at the AG's office. All have the same type of role. They're all handling cases for the Department of Consumer Affairs for all the different various boards. It's just the way it was set up, and it's separated and then eventually has come back together. So I don't have a complete answer for you, but that's kind of what has happened over the years.
Something that was done before you.
Before I was around, you know.
We're just saying something because you've
Although
been around
although-
a long time.
Although I feel like I've been around a long time.
Well, and
Yes.
we have 7 offices and they have 13.
Right.
So, I mean, do they typically have a ton more cases to handle, or
It,
just like you said, they want to focus specifically on the medical board side?
So the issue is just really the size of the board itself. I was actually a medical board investigator before coming over to the division. So just a lot more cases, a lot more kind of mass to handle. So that's why they're probably a third, almost 2/3 bigger than our half.
They're about 2/3 bigger than.
Yeah.
We have 39 investigators in our offices on the IEU side, and they have about 80.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot.
They're big.
They're big.
yeah, and doctors, are kind of a bigger target in the complaint arena, and so they get a lot of complaints that come in through that board, and can be, very complex. Not that our cases aren't complex and get as convoluted, but they're definitely a bigger target and probably have more attorneys involved, and so there's some time-consuming issues that they have to deal with, more so than some of our investigations. Okay. You want to talk on case types?
So this is kind of just a general overview of kind of investigation case types that come across the division. Not necessarily with your board, but kind of, over all of our clients. A lot of prescription issues, narcotic issues. For you guys, a lot of unlicensed activity, aiding and abetting, is a big one. A lot of fraud, insurance fraud, patient abuse, and then sexual misconduct, sexual assault cases.
So we were asked also to kind of give you a step-by-step process from the complaints coming in through investigations and the outcomes. So we put together, this is a very basic flow chart. There's definitely more complexities to it.
Follow the what is it? The requirements of a presentation. You got too much words up there, right?
Yeah, there is a lot, and I was kind of rushed at the end of the day yesterday trying to finalize everything. So
But I'm sure you'll explain and it'll be all clear to all of us.
That's right.
Okay.
So we're going to start up in the left corner here, and this is where information or complaints from patients or any type of information that the board staff receive, they're going to get it first, and they're going to process it, and they're first going to evaluate and determine, does the board have jurisdiction over the issue? And if they don't, then they're going to advise the complainants, if they have that information, where they can file their complaint that's appropriate to whatever they're complaining about. But the case will basically be closed at that point, and the board, no further action will take place. And as far as board-specific processes, I'm not going to talk to details because they're going to be more experts on it. I'll just kind of be overview. So they can do a presentation for you about very specific things if they haven't done it already. After they determine that it is going to stay at the board to be processed, they're going to determine if it needs an investigation. And so board staff here will use what we've developed over the years is our case referral guidelines for investigation. Do you want to talk on that part?
Sure. So, as you folks are probably aware of, back in 2010, there was the CPEI. So that was the Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative. And why that came about, it was, kind of DCA as a whole, and specifically our Healing Arts Boards was looked at and by the legislature, and they said, okay, our cycle times aren't as fast as we'd like them to see. And so what are some solutions? Well, we'll give some staff out. And so with CPI came some non-sworn special investigative staff. And I think your board, it was kind of a hit or miss who got who and how many, but you did, I think, get a special investigator position. And for some boards that fit well, and some boards it didn't fit well. RN particularly, LVN particularly, and Med Board received quite a lot. So I think they got like 10 plus of those special investigators. And so what were these special investigators supposed to do? Well, they're supposed to handle kind of the less complicated, less for potential for harm for our consumers. So with that came like a case acceptance criteria saying, okay, these types of cases should come to the sworn staff at the department, and these shall remain at the boards and bureaus. So basically with that, with CPI in 2010, recently in January 1st of this year with SB 467, basically put that case acceptance criteria into law. It's saying, okay, these cases, ones that's like urgent and high, shall come to the division, and for the reasons I already explained. And then categories 3 and 4, which were routine, would stay with the board. And so part of the criteria is when your staff look and do an analysis on a case, they'll say, okay, does it meet these criteria, or does it need to stay with us? I will tell you, your board analysts and your enforcement units are very savvy. They can run a desk investigation very well when there's no need for actual field work to be done. So they don't send the division a lot of any cases that don't need us to go out on. We'll have some boards that will send us cases that we will have to reject and say, I'm sorry, it doesn't meet the criteria, because if we accept everything, the division would be overloaded and we wouldn't be able to perform our primary function. So your staff are very good at looking at that criteria, handling stuff they can handle, and only sending what needs to come over to the division to the division. So that's what that, and it's now called the Case Referral Guideline for Investigation.
Your board's also unique that you can utilize experts to do inspections and look at records and things like that, which help you kind of process them in-house versus having to have the investigator necessarily go out there. But we also coordinate very much, during our investigation with your experts as well. So once it's determined, it's going for investigation to the division. It's going to be submitted over as a request for service, and specifying specifically what the request is, what type of investigation, or what the allegations are, any code sections that apply, and a lot of the details and supporting documents will come to us. If it stays in-house, the board staff and your experts will process it, similarly, but staying with the board. Once it comes to the division, Stephanie's unit processes it, the intake and putting the files together. And we usually send out cases based on geographic location, but it doesn't necessarily mean that another office won't, go into that area because of the caseload that another office has. So we transfer cases around, but it's essentially geographic is how we assign them. So it goes out to the field office. The supervisor will review it, assess it, and they will make an assignment to an investigator. And the investigation, will commence. These are just some key areas that happen during the investigation, but there's investigative planning and a lot of things that go into it. But they're basically going to interview witnesses, interview the subject at some point. They're going to gather documents. And with your board, they're going to go out and look at the facility. The board expert that we coordinate with the board staff to get will come out and actually review the documents, and they'll make a determination of documents that they feel that they need or that are relevant to the investigation that need to be collected. Then we would, contact the patients and get releases. If we don't get releases, then we have investigative subpoena authority, and we're able to subpoena the records that we need. If it's unlicensed activity, we may be doing an undercover operation to determine that they are actually operating, doing some surveillance and gathering that evidence as well. If it's a criminal matter and we need documents and the subpoena process isn't going to work for us, then we may, issue a search warrant that's signed by a Superior Court judge and go in and actually seize the original records, and we'll have them in our evidence as that process. Once we've done everything, we're going to finalize everything we have into an investigative report. Your expert's going to prepare a report. It may or may not be part of our investigative report, just depends on the type of the investigation. But that report is always going to go back to the board. If we determine we have criminal violations, the criminal violations are going to be submitted out to the local jurisdictions. The district attorneys, or for some locations, the city attorneys handle prosecutions. Mostly the city attorneys handle misdemeanor filings, and the DAs will handle felony. And in some counties, they handle both. The DA handles everything. So they'll review our case. At the same time, the board staff have the case, and they're starting the administrative process. And these will most of the time go simultaneously. Each one will have its own track. The city attorney or DA will review it. If they feel that there's enough to file charges, they'll file the criminal charges, or sometimes they'll file civil charges on it, depending what works best for that violation. And then they'll take it to trial. Sometimes they settle, they'll come to some agreement, especially on civil cases, and it never really goes to trial, and there'll be, some sort of settlement, or there'll be a conviction. And if we didn't prove our case well enough, or the DA is not able to get a successful prosecution, they'll be acquitted. Either way, the conviction information or whatever happened with the trial will also come back. That information comes back to the board staff to evaluate, because sometimes on a conviction they can take further action, or that may be the only action, especially on unlicensed activity, that they'll be able to take some sort of action, or there's a licensee involved with that unlicensed activity. Once it comes back, during our investigation, we'll use a board expert that will have authority to review documents and then let us know what documents they need. But when the case comes back to the board, they may need an additional expert opinion on it. And so then they can send it out for an expert opinion and get that report back. At some point, they decide we have enough to move forward, or we don't. If they don't, it's going to get closed in some manner. They have lots of various different reasons that it may not go to the AG's office, but they'll submit it to the AG's office for accusation. And once it gets to the AG's office, then it's going to get processed and for the administrative hearing or a stipulated agreement. And then you're going to see back to the board some sort of proposed decision or proposed stipulation. And then that's where the board now makes their final decision on what action is going to take place. So in a nutshell, that's the simple process. Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about what the timeline looks like from when the request is put in to when an investigator is assigned? And that probably depends on a lot of things, but
Right.
give us an idea.
Usually that's a fairly fast process. We've been cleaning up our time frames. Our overall goal is to investigate to completion is in 180 days, 6 months. Sometimes we meet that, sometimes we don't. Our timelines right now are a little bit higher than that on average. But from intake, they usually process it within about 3 to 5 days. And then the folder is sent out. It comes across the commander's desk. I don't keep it longer than a day. And I make determinations on, because I'm looking at my whole area, is this office impacted? Will it go faster if I send it to this office, even though the travel may be a little bit more? By the time it gets to the supervisor, depending, they have to assess their staff's caseload. If they're heavy, it may stay assigned to or stay on the supervisor's desk a little longer, unless there's some sort of expedite issue or something that needs to be processed. But we try to get it out to the investigator as soon as possible. So that process from intake to assigned to investigator can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days. The rare occasion there's some other issues or things like that that may be longer. We developed an electronic tracking system, which we call our CAT system. It's Case Administration and Tracking System. And everything is put into that, and there's automated email alerts when different things happen. So when the case number is assigned, the case enforcement contact that's put onto the system will receive an email that the case number is assigned the minute they electronically submit it. And the staff, all the boards have access to input it into our system. So it kind of speeds up our process. So the minute they hit submit, it's coming over to DFI, case number is signed and our timeline starts. It's day one. When they submit electronically copies of documents, or if we need originals or certifications, they'll send those over. As soon as we get that and with the file, then it gets pushed out to the offices. That's why it only usually takes about a week, because if everything's moving right. When it goes out to the field office, Stephanie's unit assigns it. Another automated email that it's transferred from intake to the field office goes out to the enforcement contact. When the supervisor assigns it to an investigator, another email is generated that sends the enforcement contact that this investigator is assigned to the case. If it gets transferred to another investigator for whatever reason, or to another field offices, all those are email notifications. We're trying to develop more communication. Prior to our computer system, everything was done on paper, and it was hard to get notifications and know where things were. And so that's kind of, for larger boards, that was a lot of emails that they were getting. But I think for the smaller boards, it's much more manageable, and they're aware of where things are and what the timelines are taking. We also foster communication that the enforcement contacts and the enforcement staff can contact our supervisors at any of the field offices and get a status update, when they feel they need it. The first 90 days, probably not much is going on. We're just getting started. But after that, then they start checking and get status updates. And then they can, kind of know where it's going. They can also track on the system. They have access to a report in our CAT system, because we track our time, and the way the division is funded, we track our hours very closely, because the funding of the division, our portion of the division, is paid for by the boards based on the number of hours we do our investigations. So they can monitor, the specific cases for their board, and they can actually see hours as they go each month as they pull these reports up. They can pull them up anytime. We'll give you pretty much live data within 7 days or so. But that answers your question as far as how long it takes to get out to the investigator. Any other questions on this process? If anybody has any questions, you can always go through your board staff, and we can get other answers. But they're very versed, and we have a lot of communication with them, and so they know the process very well too. You want to talk on this?
So to circle back on our kind of sworn peace officers and our non-sworn, which I spoke about earlier, these are kind of the overview of the duties that a sworn investigator, sworn peace officer can perform, and then your non-sworn investigator and analyst staff at the board level. So as I was saying, as a peace officer, these are our powers. So like I said, we carry firearms. We have the power of arrest. We can issue misdemeanor citations. So if we go out and we see an individual practicing unlicensed, we can actually issue them a misdemeanor citation, which is almost like a promise to appear when you get a traffic citation. It's a kind of same setup versus if they refuse to sign it, then we will arrest them and take them to jail. So we have the ability for search and seizure. So that's wearing number one, doing a body wire and do that surreptitious recording. That's recording with the other person not knowing, which is kind of key in some undercover operations. We can obtain and serve search warrants. And then we talked about this. Our certification is very necessary for us to keep our status as sworn peace officers with post. And then, of course, your non-sworn investigators and your analyst staff can do, they have limited powers of arrest, which is really not, they really don't perform as an employee typically. They have the ability to subpoena records, testify in court, gather documentation, write a report, like what your enforcement staff can do at the board.
And as peace officers, we get a lot of other, investigative training, the certified hours to keep our status up. We also take other courses in interview and interrogation, report writing, things like that. And we're trained to deal with high-risk situations and violent people. I mean, that's why we go through the training that we go through, and the services that we provide. We can, get into those situations and deal with it better than having non-sworn and putting them in an awkward position of, getting injured.
Wait, go ahead.
Do you track the number of times or the number of incidents when there's violent issues, when there are times when you have to use the special training of a sworn officer?
Yeah, it's actually required with the Department of Justice anytime we use force that we have to document and such. Yeah, I think it's really important for your board, and I missed that key line, so thanks for bringing it back up, Rex, especially because we're going out with, board consultants out to inspect. And if there is an issue with the subject or the situation or the place where we're doing the inspection, that is our responsibility, is the protection of our staff, your staff out there. So that's a key thing to note too, that's what we're doing when we're going out to help facilitate them, to keep them safe, to be able for them to do their job.
So I was asked to get some numbers so you understood kind of some of the caseloads that the division has. So currently, as of yesterday, we had 911 open requests for services for the division. That's just the IEU portion. That doesn't include HQIU. Of that, currently we have 30 open active investigations or requests for services from the board. And then I show some of the past fiscal years of what those levels were. So in 13-14, we had 20 requests for services opened. And then 14-15, there was 93, 15-16, 43. A lot of variables, make the numbers go up and down. We like to think that the board is doing a great job, and they are. I think some of the numbers, and with the case acceptance criteria where it's forcing boards to have to deal with the lower level cases and not overload the division, that reduces the number of requests for services that come over to us. in going way back in my time frame when I was an investigator with the division would have over 2,000 cases, but we were handling probation monitoring for a lot of different boards. So those were quarterly investigations that we had to complete timely on top of all the other investigations that we were doing. And before CPEI, the boards were just sending everything to the division to do, and the division size never grew. Boards' licensing bases all grew, and some of their staff grew, but the division has been very landlocked in our size and had some reductions, along the way where during the different budget crises and hiring freezes, lost, a few positions. So that's part of why the case acceptance criteria came along, is we just couldn't handle everything that was coming to us, and we needed to partition back different things. So the lower level cases, if the boards can handle them, they'd handle them, and the more serious and complex type cases are supposed to come to us.
That's huge. Those are huge drops.
That could also be depending on what complaints are coming to the board. I mean, if information and complaints aren't coming to the board, you're not going to have anything to send out. So yeah, sometimes it's public awareness. Somebody's had an issue with a licensee, but they don't know where what to do about it, and so they don't do anything about it, and the board never knows about it. So I think the department, with their public relations, they're doing a great job of trying to get that information out there. And with the internet, there's been a lot more. But I think the public doesn't always understand how consumer affairs relates, and then how the boards fit into that, or anything specific to that. But I think it's more public awareness. And that's why we try to get out more and talk and share our information with you and out to other law enforcement agencies. I've done presentations for different local jurisdictions that for a long time we were the best kept secret in the state. Nobody knew who we were or what we did. Or if you say consumer affairs, they think we do toaster repair investigations. So I've heard all the jokes.
And I really think, I know that number, looks like a huge drop, but I really attribute that to the staff. Your staff are definitely handling things that they can handle, and they're sophisticated in it, and they really are sending the stuff that really requires us. They are sending us that information. So part of my role in outreach is, like Rex was saying, the division was the best kept secret. Very generous. I like that. I'm going to use that. When I started in 2001, I tried to put in the Division of Investigation, and we didn't even exist. And so up until probably 2 years ago, there is no really information about the Division of Investigation out there. So we actually developed a web page off of DCA's main web page, and we have our blog, which we put up and is current with all this kind of basic information that we're giving you guys today. It's all there. It has all of our offices, phone numbers. A big reason for it is to get some positive press out there of what the division does, what the impact we have on, and some of your cases will end up on the blog. So some of the more noteworthy cases will end up there. And, we coordinate with board staff, and obviously it's not a surprise that this information is going up on if it's one of your guys' cases. So there's that coordination. I think that's it on the blog.
Yeah, you can go on there on the blog and read press releases and things like that for all the various boards, and kind of get an idea on some high-profile cases that we've done.
And you can sign up, and then when a blog story comes out, it'll shoot you an email. So that's kind of handy.
So are there any other questions?
Do you find that when you go to investigate a case with an expert consultant that the licensee that you're investigating is surprised assisting the consultant with their investigation, medical records or what have you?
Most of the time, we,
We conceal.
yeah, we're concealed, so we can be armed, but we don't try to share that information necessarily, unless we're doing a high-profile incident or a search warrant or something like that. Then we're going to have a raid vest and police on our back and things like that. But other than that, we're a lot like detectives. We dress professional. We keep our equipment concealed, and don't advertise that. Okay.
My mic went out. I need to take yours. Sorry, you don't get it.
I can talk loud.
There has been, oh, see, yeah, that is better. There is the Veterinary Medical Board also have expert consultants that go out with us. And so we actually had one go out on a search warrant with us, and we were in kind of our full police gear, but that's in a search warrant kind of a setting. But yeah.
We had one of your experts who used
Oh, yes.
as well, so
Yes.
can't discuss the case, but we definitely
Yes.
use them
Yes.
to our advantage and bringing in expertise. Because we're experts in conducting investigations, but we're not necessarily experts in your practice act.
Oh, shoot. Nobody can hear you.
Sorry. Like I said, we're experts in investigations and not the expert of your practice act. We're very knowledgeable about it because we've done investigations or we learn about them and we do the prep on the case. We're looking at the code sections that apply for it. But sometimes we need that expertise to get to very technical issues and be able to recognize them quickly and make our investigation be more efficient and move along.
I got something else to say. So on that note, when we go in with the expert inspectors, we're there almost to facilitate a good working relationship. We don't go in there and are kind of abrupt with them. Very much not. We try to explain the process, try to put them at ease as much as possible when the situation is obviously kind of nerve-wracking for them. But we definitely don't use our peace officer authority or power in situations that don't need it. That's why we are trained. We're trained to deal with difficult people. That doesn't mean putting them in cuffs. That can mean talking them down, using our verbal skills to kind of calm the situation down. So that's very much to our position going into those situations, is to make it as amenable as possible in that kind of a situation. You got another one?
Do we have enough expert consultants, or an adequate number?
You can't have that. I can't. I mean, every time, so when your board's enforcement staff send us a case, they'll put contact board analysts for enforcement, for expert consultants to go out, and we don't have, they give us a name and number and that contact occurs. So we've not had an issue with, we can't find one. I mean, every time they provide us one and we're able to get into contact. So that might not be a great question for us to answer.
We participated at the last expert training that the board staff put on, and actually we were very impressed with how it went and the topics covered and the interaction that the experts had, and we got a unique opportunity to sit in and watch parts of it, and Stephanie I think saw most of it, and the room was full, so I didn't think there was a problem with the number of experts.
And it's really the division as investigators, we don't get that opportunity to work with board inspectors much. So it's PT board, vet board, and we cherish those relationships we have with those board inspectors going in because they are such a key and vital role in our investigation that we build good relationships with them, and it definitely helps the whole process along. So we're very thankful that we have that opportunity with your board.
If there's no other questions, we
Share this PowerPoint with us.
Sure.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. We'll give the board staff a copy, and then they can share that with you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for letting us come and talk to you.
I guess I got to give the mic back. It's kind of nice.
I know. Taking mine away.
It really was working. They just didn't want to hear it.
We also brought some brochures about us, and so they can be passed around.
Because the sugar affects my body so heavy. If I wanna go sleep, I can eat sugar.
We're going to take a brief 5-minute recess and reconvene at 9:56.
Makes me sleep.
We are back from recess. The time is 10 a.m. I just wanted to take a second to thank D of I, Rex and Stephanie for providing the information to the board members today, but also for participating in the expert consultant training earlier this year. Alicia?
I wanted to publicly thank our staff. It sounds like the Department of Investigation is very impressed with what you do and your expertise in handling the cases. And without making a lot of extra work, I'm still kind of stuck on the numbers and how much they've dropped. And if indeed our staff is largely responsible for that, I mean, if there's any way to pull up numbers quickly without having extra work for someone, I would like to see that, and just really, again, thank our staff for working so hard and being very good at what you do. Thank you.
Not a problem. We'll try to incorporate something for the November meeting into the enforcement report.
Any other board comments on the presentation? Any public comment? Great. Moving on to agenda item number 17, Consumer and Professional Associations and Intergovernmental Relations Reports. Do we have any representatives from FSBPT? No. DCA? Hi, good morning.
Good morning, President Ellaby, members. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you for the opportunity to address you on behalf of the Department of Consumer Affairs. I'm Shelley Jones, and I'm a manager with the division's Board and Bureau Relations team. First, I want to update the board on the changes to the department's executive team. In May, after 8 years with the department, Chief Deputy Director Tracy Ryan accepted a new job with the Rural County Representatives of California. In late June, Governor Brown appointed Jeff Mason as Chief Deputy Director. Jeff has been with the department since 2013, serving as Chief for the Bureau of Security and Investigative Services, and most recently as Chief Deputy Commissioner for the Bureau of Real Estate. Jeff was sworn into office last month, and we're excited to have him on board. Also in May, Melinda McLean, the department's Deputy Director for Legislation and Regulatory Review, accepted a new position in the governor's office. In late July, Governor Brown announced his appointment of Adam Quinones as Deputy Director for Legislative and Regulatory Review. Adam previously served with Melinda as Assistant Deputy Director for Legislation. Finally, also in May, DCA's Assistant Chief Counsel Tamara Colson was appointed as Assistant Chief Counsel for the Bureau of Medical Cannabis Regulation. The governor has appointed Ryan Marcroft, previously a Deputy Attorney General at the California Department of Justice, to replace Ms. Colson, and he was sworn in this week. We're also happy to have him join the DCA family. I also want to provide the board with an update on the North Carolina Board of Dental Examiners legislative language. The department has been continuing to work with the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development and various stakeholders to clarify the director's proposed review process. Specifically, this new language was recently added to SB 1194 by Senator Hill, which was subsequently pulled by the author following yesterday's committee hearing. The board, we will keep all the boards and bureaus apprised as any new developments occur on that. On July 13th, the department held its first annual Sunset Review briefing with the board scheduled to undergo Sunset Review in 2017. This briefing focused on reviewing the Sunset Review timeline as well as the Sunset Review report template. The intent is to assist boards with understanding the Sunset Review requirements, provide guidance from executive officers currently undergoing Sunset Review this year, and make the boards aware of all of the resources available at the department, such as the legislative and budget offices, to assist with completing the report. The department has also implemented a process to assist boards with onboarding new executive officers. We believe this will greatly assist boards bringing on new leaders. Part of the process includes making all DCA division heads available to the new EO for a briefing on the services provided by that division and the work currently in process between the division and the board. For example, the Division of Legislative and Regulatory Review would meet with the new EO to review recently passed and pending legislation impacting the board, as well as to discuss the legislative and regulatory process. DCA will also provide the new EO with information on the department and the board, such as contact lists, strategic plans, organizational charts, and fund conditions that will help bring the new EO up to speed. While on the subject of training, just a quick reminder that the final 2 board member orientation trainings of this year will be held September 22nd and November 16th at DCA in Sacramento. Board members are required to complete orientation training within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment to the board. As you may know, the department's Solid Training and Planning Solutions Unit is dedicated to organizational development and offers a wide array of services to DCA's bureaus and boards. During the last week of September, the 3rd Solid-sponsored Brown Bag Gathering for executive officers and bureau chiefs will be held. The agenda includes psychological safe workplaces, building a work philosophy, a peer panel, and an update on the Future Leadership Development Program. The peer panel and meeting date will be finalized this week, and subsequently Outlook invitations will be sent out. One of the initiatives discussed at the EO Brown Bag Gathering that we are very excited about is the creation of the Future Leadership Development Program. This initiative is designed to assist the department and its programs in growing the next generation of executive officers and bureau chiefs. The Future Leadership Development Program will have 3 parts to assist in the development of managers into executives. First is training available and alongside executive officers and bureau chiefs. The second will be mentorship opportunities from executives throughout the department and its boards and bureaus. And the third will be completion of special projects designed to benefit the participants, as well as the department and its boards and bureaus. The projects will be designed to address specific problems or issues facing the department and its boards and bureaus, which are expected to be collected during the EO Brown Bag gatherings. Also, as part of DCA's strategic plan, Solid is implementing a mentoring pilot program. The pilot is voluntary, but if the board wishes to participate, they can join by contacting Solid's manager, Damon Nelson. The pilot affords line staff a great deal of flexibility to learn from various participating managers. In addition to some DCA units, the boards and bureaus that are currently participating in the program include the Board of Optometry, the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians, Medical Board, Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, the Bureau of Automotive Repair, Acupuncture Board, and the Bureau of Electronic and Appliance Repair, Home Furnishings, and Thermal Insulation. An update on the Breeze system. As you're aware, DCA launched the second release of Breeze in January, adding 7 boards and 1 bureau to the Breeze system, putting us now with a total of 18 programs on Breeze, including your board. The board is seeing a high volume of renewal applicants using the online portal. Since launch in late January, 73% of all of your renewals have been submitted using the online portal. Those who chose to submit renewals online see a dramatically quicker turnaround for their application approval. Of those renewals submitted online in July, 98% were processed in 1 day or less. Those who mail in their application typically see the renewal processed in 1 to 2 weeks, provided the application is complete. There remain 14 outstanding requests for system changes that are not yet scheduled for resolution in an upcoming software release as of August 22nd. Furthermore, the department has implemented a new reporting tool named Qbert, which stands for Quality Business Intelligence Reporting Tool. This tool allows boards and bureaus direct access to build, edit, and run reports to suit their business needs. DCA resources are available to assist the boards and bureaus if some training is needed to understand and use the new tool. This tool is supplemental to the reports and data extracts already available to the boards and bureaus. And finally, this year the department will develop a new strategic plan for the years 2017 through 2019. One of the components of the strategic planning process is a survey of stakeholders. The survey will be distributed to stakeholders, including advisory committee members and board members in mid-September. Your feedback is vital, and we respectfully ask your participation to assist us improving the department's services. That concludes my update from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you.
Shelley, so
Yes.
that last piece of information you shared, that will be distributed to board members?
Correct.
And how will that be distributed?
I believe it's going to go out in an email distribution, but I'm not 100% positive. I can follow up and let you know on that for sure.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Any other comments from board members? Any public comment? Thank you so much. We appreciate it. CPTA?
Good morning. I'm Stacy Defoe. I'm Executive Director for California Physical Therapy Association, and thank
morning.
you for the opportunity to be here. Good morning. Really, I just want to remind the board that we do have our annual conference coming up in about a month, a little over a month, October 8th and 9th in Santa Clara, and we would love to extend the invitation for the board to participate in our conference. We do allow the board to have a free booth in our exhibit hall if you want to take us up on that opportunity. It's still available. If that's too much or you're unable to do it at this time, we can also offer a table if you want to have an information table. It can be staffed or unstaffed. If you want to just provide the information, that's fine too. So just want to make sure you are aware that that opportunity is there, and hopefully we'll be able to get some presents for the board at the conference for our members. And that's really all I have for now. If there are any questions of the association, I'd be happy to address them.
I was wondering if you had heard any feedback regarding Breeze from any of your constituents.
We haven't heard a whole lot of feedback. I don't know if Tamika's in our office. If she has, she can add to this. But I guess in my estimation, no news is good news. So we haven't had an influx of calls or complaints or people saying that it's not working. So I think from our perspective, that part's going pretty well. The only feedback I've heard regarding Breeze in particular, and I've heard it from a couple of our members who are more invested in the process, and it has to do with the lists of disciplinary actions. There used to be a list that was sent out, and I think it was out of the old database, and people were able to kind of look to see what all of the actions were all in one place. And now with Breeze, I guess that's not available. If you want to look somebody up, you have to look them up on an individual basis through the entire database, and it's a little bit cumbersome. So I guess the feedback would be if there are people who need that information or want that information, especially in administrative positions, if they're looking, maybe at their employees or, I don't know if consumers would need that, but it has more to do with at administrative levels. That information was valuable, and if there was a way that we could find a way to bring that back in some form, that would be great. Okay.
Great. Thank
Thank
you
you so much.
Moving right along to agenda item number 21. We have the application report with Sarah.
Good morning, members.
Good morning.
Sarah Conley. I'm the acting manager for the Application Services and License Maintenance Program. That was effective July 1st of this year, and I have to say I'm honored to be serving the board in that capacity at this time. So I'll get on to my report. I laughed in developing this because at the last time I was before the board, I prepared you to not receive a lot of updates and changes, significant changes in the programs, and just reporting on day-to-day progress because there were a lot of changes at that time, about a year ago. I feel like here's where I insert just kidding, because this report has a lot of significant changes and a lot of things to increase efficiency. I feel like that's been the theme lately, is what can we do to increase efficiency but also meet our mandate of consumer protection. The first item addressed in the briefing paper are staffing changes. We do have an additional staff member, Angel Otley, and she's been a wonderful addition to the program. She supports the analyst with the applications and processing them. We still have 2 remaining vacancies, so we're working on getting those filled. The next item is alternate approval pathway, which will be addressed after the presentation of the application services report. Licensing performance measures the collection of data to report licensing performance measures has started. The Breeze system was updated to provide capability to record that data. It's in the form of a record-specific data item on our checklist in the system. It's called application milestones, and it's manually updated to collect processing time, whether an application is complete or deficient, and how long it takes for deficiencies to be fulfilled by an applicant. This all stemmed from a budget letter, and it's to report this data for performance-based budgeting. That part of it gets more into the administrative portion of the board, and so to not miss anything up there, I won't speak to that, but we are beginning the data collection, and we will be working with DCA to provide that information, and I just recently got an update that more information will be available to our staff to work on getting that information reported for the next fiscal year for planning the next budget. The next item, again, moving to Breeze, we continue to make enhancements to the system to, like the briefing paper says, narrow the gap between our business process and the system capability. The ongoing changes are in different releases. They're approximately 6 to 8 weeks apart. So like I said, they are ongoing, but they're not instant. We can't just update the system as we need to. We have to go through system testing and development and working with the vendor and things like that. Let's see. The next item was Qbert. We do have a new data collection system, as the representative from DCA mentioned, and it looks very promising. It's going to be nice to have some consistent data, as some of the discussion has shown. With legacy systems, it's been difficult to make sure that data is always reported accurately, and this should provide that. It will take some time to provide those comparisons, because even now, with this quarter being from Qbert and having that information, we're still comparing to old data from our legacy system. So it's going to take a while to have that information to compare to over time. The next item is that the application services and license maintenance programs, we're really being aggressive in separating those programs, and that's to provide efficiency. A basic example would just be being accessibility. So when someone calls in, instead of going through a main line that goes to both programs, a licensee could go directly to license services, applications go directly to applications, and it just provides the efficiency in services as well as workload data collection. And then, the survey went out to, I didn't specify here, but California PT and PTA programs to ask for feedback on various things the boards are doing, what they would like, the programs would like to see. And we got some very valuable feedback, which I really appreciate. And we're looking at all of those comments and all the developments and things that we're working on and try to address the needs of the programs and for the students.
I'd love to see a summary of that
Okay.
evaluation or survey. Just
Yeah,
to-
we can definitely provide that information. I do have some just main points. Everyone seemed had positive feedback about the website. It was very user friendly, and the program seemed to really appreciate the board's attempt at customer service. Unfortunately, the resource issues kind of hinder that, but it seems like everyone's appreciative of what we're trying to accomplish with the resources that we have. Some areas that they would like to see, the programs generally want to see some improvements on is accessibility to staff for more information, process clarity, and obviously shorter processing times. Any other questions on the report? Yes.
Sorry. Hi, Sarah. Just for really my benefit, maybe the benefit of the board. So I get a fair number of usually it's applicants, students, asking me questions, and I've sort of had informal conversations with Liz. What I've been doing, and I guess is just more a question of guidance, and tell me if I'm doing what you would like me to do. What I've been doing is sort of contacting, one of the staff myself before even attaching the original email and sort of getting some guidance one-on-one. What do you want me to do with this email? Should I just forward it to you? Do I CC you? Do you want me to handle it? I'd be happy to handle it if you tell me what you want me to tell the student, really the applicant.
I'm glad you brought this up because you could forward it to us. That's staff's job. And we should be fielding those inquiries. But in contacting the programs, I presented that I'm the liaison basically for the schools, and that I want the schools to be in contact with me, because I know the limited resources doesn't always allow for students to be able to get in contact with us right away. I want to provide another outlet for the schools if there is a common question. So the program directors or other faculty, anybody that needs to get in touch with the board to provide clarification to their students, I do appreciate those programs that are taking that on, because it really assists the board in providing that information to their students. So I would like to keep that line of communication open with them. So any inquiries you get, please forward them on to me. I'd be happy to either address them or get them to the appropriate staff to do so.
I think that, you sort of splicing, or not splicing, but sort of creating these two different tracks between applications and licensees might help.
We're hoping so.
Yeah.
More, it's kind of like a website. The fewer clicks it takes you to get to the information, the better. Same thing with, phone calls, emails.
I'd really like to echo just one thing that Sarah said, though. If the program directors have questions asked of them by their applicants or our future applicants, if they could go through that channel of communication, it serves two benefits. It's more expedient for the applicant, but it also is an educational opportunity for the staff at the school. And then that same question that might be asked, because the variables that are involved for each individual applicant are too numerous to even consider, giving you any kind of boilerplate answer or something. It's much better to have them have that direct line of communication with us, so we can, one, educate the program director to be able to kind of understand the process better, because some of the questions that are asked are somewhat self-explanatory if they had gone to the website and gone through the how-tos and those kind of things. So, and again, but I also want to be very sensitive that sometimes they have one kind of twist of a variable that they're not sure that guidance still fits, and that's where we'll be here to answer those questions.
Thank you.
And with that, it's also educational for our staff, like for me to know what are misconceptions
Absolutely.
and information, what is something that we need to be looking at to provide clarity in for the applicants in the process or whatever information they're looking for.
One of the things that you mentioned was, it almost went silent or I didn't hear you. Yeah, whenever I hear, the customer service aspect is not as strong, then that is usually a communications on our part, because there's some information that is obviously available on a website that is not reaching people. And because the website, or any time when you just put something online, it is not actively seeking out people. So there's no pull. They have to find us. So all of this information that they may want is on the website. So I think maybe this will pertain to the outreach that we had in the yesterday, that what I have found to be effective is a did you know, by the way kind of thing. And to have it in such small piece meals and be repetitive in the posting on a Facebook site or any of those sites, just so that the information almost you're spraying it there constantly, that people close to you will know it. If you got 5 applicants, one of them will know because they've seen it in a, by the way, subconscious level. And I just thought that, that might be a different way of, pushing it in front of them, because it's just information that we're trying to move into them. And if we move that information in front of clients or customers in a strategic way and spray them, even if they don't get touched by the first time, maybe the second or the third time, and have it almost be on a loop. Because these are the 5 or 10, 15 questions that we find them the most common on, it's probably on the frequently asked questions on the website. And I just thought that may be a different way to, address the same problem.
Yes, thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. It's definitely something that staff has wanted to do. It's actually something that's been discussed with outreach, is maybe each quarter pick a theme, and maybe around prior to graduation doing a campaign for the application process on Facebook to get those, like you said, the tidbits of information out, because you can, like you said, more easily absorb a quick hit versus taking it all in. So we'd definitely like to be able to do something like that. So thank you.
I think that's one important piece. And then I wonder if an applicant or a licensee goes to the website and doesn't find the information they want, how easy or hard is it for that person, because I haven't done it, to find another avenue or the information to actually reach someone at the office? If that's the complaint that, they can't reach staff, how easy or difficult is it for them to find that information to get to who they need to get to?
As far as how easy is it to get in touch with someone?
I guess both, to find the information and then to also get someone live on the phone.
Obviously, it is a point of struggle for the board. It is a resource concern. And the other part of it it's difficult is that just keeping up, because people, if they don't get someone right away, they will continue to call and call and call. So it's kind of this endless loop of trying to get in touch with people, and then they call back, or it happens where people will talk to someone and then want to speak to someone else to see if they get that opportunity. And I don't know if if people get the impression that we have hundreds of employees, but we don't. And so we try to address everything as much as possible. So if they don't find the information on the website, they can call, they can email. And that information is available. It's just, and we address it as we can.
So I think maybe the avenues that you're looking for is, so on the website, as an example, under the applicant tab, there is an actual email address specific for applicants to submit questions.
Nice.
There is still an issue with how many staff we have to address those emails as they come in. And then next to that in the licensee tab is another separate email, so we can kind of categorize what kind of communications are coming in. And the volume is really high. I mean, there's, we're getting 1,500 applications a year, and there's only 4 or 5 people that are designated to applications, but you have a couple vacancies too. And then, outreach is a kind of faceted campaign. There are so many different levels, and we have a number of different types of stakeholders. So we have applicants, we have licensees, and we have educators, and we have program directors, and those kind of things. So to be as proactive as we can, we learn from each facet how to maybe improve another facet. So as we realize that the communication is lacking for applicants, and we'll direct resources in that direction, we also realize that there might be an added benefit to also go after the program directors, because they have more direct contact with those applicants. And so anything we can do, we will be doing. And it is a constant adjustment.
I've got a quick question for our EO. Last year when Loma Linda University hosted our board meeting, I remember you having sort of a little impromptu session. Do you remember that?
I do.
The Loma Linda graduating class and Dr. Sams. I thought that was great. I don't know how many times, I'm not going to suggest that you do this often, but I really don't know how many times staff is able to do that. But I thought about it, great educational opportunity, maybe sort of head off at the pass future questions from the applicants.
I absolutely agree, and I've seen real benefit rewards from those efforts. So as an example, whether it be that small snippet of time for Loma Linda, or something more extensive for Sac State, or any other school that might invite us to come in and present that kind of information, you can see a more streamlined application process for that group, that graduating class, as it comes through. Less problems, less questions, because we've been proactive in delivering that information. We have some travel restrictions. We have some issues or barriers when it comes to how many staff I can take for something like that. But it is definitely something that we want to improve in doing. And so I encourage educational programs to consider us as a resource in that way. And if we can accommodate those requests of coming out and speaking to a graduation class, we will. I mean, we look forward to it.
Thank you, Jason. How about a cluster of programs getting together under one
Oh,
roof?
absolutely.
Just to be more efficient about
Yeah,
that?
even that, absolutely.
Thank you.
I have a question about the data we get in Qbert. Can you give us an example of something that you might report back to us that would be important?
Just all of the data that we provide. So it's just going to be more consistent. And how we used to provide data was based upon money received, and so and how that money was reported was based upon like accounting, and there could be delays, and it was a little more fluid. This we will have a better understanding of the dates. We're going off approved transactions, so we'll know exactly like when something was received, when it was processed, when it was completed, and things like that. And we'll know where it's coming from to get a better idea of workload and things like that. So it's everything from applications, which includes renewal applications and all transactions. You'll see in the licensing report, address and name changes, just all the data that we collect.
I think I can really help with this one, though. So Qbert is a business reporting tool that is built on the mainframe that IBM created called Cognos. And I used Cognos in my old business. So it is a way to extract the raw data in any form or filter that you'd like. It's limitless in how you can create those filters. So if you have specific questions, specific elements of data that you're interested in, as long as you understand the system, you can ask for that kind of data. You almost write a formula, if you will. So show me the number of PT applicants who graduated from USC in the years between 9 and 95, but now also reside in the San Diego County and have, you can apply all these filters to kind of section that kind of information down. It's that detailed. It can also be used to, and the intent and the design, if you see these reports changing over time, is that these will be reports that are created as templates. that instead of staff spending so much time and energy and resources collecting that data to put in these reports to report to us at quarters, Cognos will do that for us. We've written those formulas, we've given it the parameters, and it will fill that data out each and every time for us. And even kind of some display things that I think you might see changes in the website. We would have real-time data available to us. We can actually design dashboards or displays that are important information to a particular unit. So Sarah's unit in applications might have a screen in her office that actually shows her applications received now, right now, and what's the increase compared to last year, right now, live data on a ticker tape, if you will. And again, for Elsa's team in consumer enforcement, they'd have that same, how many intake, how many complaints, what types, those kind of things. Just allowing you that access to see that real-time data and identify trends as early as possible that we can be more agile, more nimble, and adjust to. So I don't want to praise it too much, but it is something that we've been waiting for a very long time, and we will be exploiting to the fullest.
One thing I do want to add is when we talk about resource issues and accessibility is in some of the issues with that, I just wanted to add that, we do want to provide the services that we can. And I don't want it to seem like we, don't call kind of thing, but it's just we appreciate our stakeholders' patience, and that I just want to reiterate that everyone is we're trying to do the best we can with what we have, and we are happy to serve everyone, but we just appreciate the patience and understanding of the position that we're in. So,
Sarah, is there like a triage system, if you will?
For incoming inquiries?
Emails from, licensees or...
Yes, it does start at a basic general inquiries they are addressed by the support staff. So that would be Angel. And then anything that's pertinent to a specific application like status, I need to re-register for an exam, anything that's particular to an individual applicant will go to the analyst that's assigned to that applicant because they're going to be most familiar with that person. Rather than saying, this is the general process, then we have the analyst kind of like a caseworker, because they can say, here's what you need to do for this instance, and if there's anything else going on, here's the other information you need to address. So the applicant can hopefully not have to have one contact per issue. It can be, here's what you need, and here's everything else to get you through the process. Mm-hmm.
Any further board discussion on Sarah's report? Any public comment? Great, thank you. We can move right down to agenda item number 22, the licensing services report.
Still have alternate approval pathway.
Oh, please, go ahead.
So the expansion of the application services report, this is its own item because it's just provides some more information on it, is the alternate approval pathway for examination eligibility. This is going to change the way that applicants sit for the way they can get eligibility for the exam and when they get it. So it would actually be pre-applicants, not applicants, because this would allow them to sit for the exams, the national exam and the law exam, prior to applying with the board. And ultimately what this would do was allow them to come to the board with their exams complete, and if they have a complete application otherwise, and be ready for licensure, rather than applying to the board for exam eligibility as well as licensure. This would allow them to take care of their exams prior to application. And the board's been working with the Federation of State Boards of Physical Therapy, to implement this process. And so all of the eligibility requirements that the board currently checks for would move to the Federation, and it would be an automated process. So the requirements are not going to be eliminated or changed. That's still going to happen. It's just going to happen through the FSBPT, and it's going to be automated. Let's see what else did. There are going to be some eligibility requirements that are imposed by the FSBPT. If for some reason the state would allow eligibility outside of those requirements from FSBPT, the applicant would not be prohibited from sitting for the exam. They would just have to come to the board, and the staff would have to manually process the eligibility. So that's option still there. So the state still has that that discretion to be able to do that. That's the overview of that issue. Can I take any questions? That
I believe
might be
Dr.
the
Drummer
easiest way
has
to
a
address
question.
it.
Sarah, do any of the other states currently use this system, or are they using the system that we have been using?
This has not been implemented yet, as far as I'm aware. So this is going to be new for all states.
It'll be a feature that's available nationwide in October, or late October to early November.
Okay. And so this has the potential to greatly reduce the work burden on staff, correct?
Yes. And that's yet to be determined exactly how much, because we'll still have we'll still be processing some manually and things like that. So,
Okay.
I just had a quick question. So Sarah, I'm on the PTBC website now, and I'm looking at the PT deadline. So first of all, I'm glad I'm not applying as a new grad at this point, because it's so that's just going to reconfigure these dates, correct, once that rolls out?
That's correct. We'll have to go back and look at those dates and reassess. Some of the need for those deadlines right now are because of this back and forth interaction that we have to have about eligibility to the exam. So I want to kind of explain this in a certain, because where some people see that as a deadline, I actually see that as an accommodation. So currently we have 90 days to make an applicant eligible. What we've actually done is we've restricted that down to a 30-day window that we can control. So 30 days prior to an examination, FSBPT, we're talking about today and the process that they use now, needs to know from the jurisdiction if that applicant is eligible for the exam. And they close that window of eligibility 30 days out. What we've asked is that applicants provide to us an application and a certificate of completion of education 30 days prior to that. So I only have 30 days to analyze what I would normally have 90 days to do and determine their eligibility. Now, that's not determine licensure. That's just determine their ability to sit for the exam. So we do have to ask 60 days in advance of the examination itself for them to have their application with us. Having said that, that's where we've made a commitment. Not quite a guarantee, but definitely a commitment. And we have been successful in maintaining that and even going past that point, but we are taking those applications in the order in which they're received. So if somebody did come in after the deadline and resources are available, we will make that attempt to get them into the exam. Once we move to alternate pathway, it may not be necessary at all.
On an additional note, in May, it came to my attention through a member that at least one school was had difficulty with processing information to be ready to be submitted so that the students could be able to be eligible to sit for the exam. And
through this process?
Through the old process.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And so because there was some difficulty with the way that information had been transmitted or had not been transmitted to the board, to staff to be able to process that. And staff very quickly took care of the issues that need to be taken care of so that those students were able to sit for the exam who likely would not have been able to if things hadn't been handled in a very expeditious manner. So I want to commend staff for taking care of that situation to get those students to be able to sit.
I will accept that on behalf of staff. Thank you.
So part of the alternative pathway is that FSBBT would be determining education completion.
Yes.
Or doing their own verification of that. Does that change once you receive that score? Is there going to be an assumption? Or will we also do our own education review?
We are still going to verify eligibility.
Okay.
So the education completion to make sure that is
So it doesn't
That's
take
it.
that away. It just means you're not handling it twice.
Or just not handling it for eligibility purposes, but we will for licensure.
Okay. And then there's the optional part of that means that, like you said, if there's a unique person that we might grant eligibility to, but doesn't fit all of the Federation's eligibility, then they couldn't use that pathway. If they attempted to use it, they would be denied. Is there built-in a referral back to us?
I don't know how that would work through the FSBPT portal, but I'd have to look at the information that's provided. We can definitely check on
That
that.
seems key.
Yeah.
If it begins to be the wave of what's the main direction to that's the first thing you do, but we have an alternative to that, it seems as though we have an obligation to make that well known. So I just have a concern about that.
That will be part of the design and the appeal process. So, and that's really the largest group of people that would pertain to. So this has the greatest effect for CAPTE or U.S. accredited graduates. It's very streamlined. It's automatic. But for those applicants that are not CAPTE accredited, that are foreign trained, there is no automated process set up for them just yet. That's something that they're looking forward to in the future, working with the credentialing agencies the same way that they're working with the educational institutions. There'll be some kind of check and balance there. But everyone that applies and the Federation deems for whatever reason that they're not eligible, we will receive a notification so that we don't lose them, that they don't slip through the cracks. They're still then on our radar. That group is going to be kind of a very small group. So one of the things that we've talked about is like Coursework Tool 6 and that decision yet to be made. That is kind of one variable that would be considered in that conversation. What wouldn't be is things that we've already have systems set in place for, such as the too low score limit or the lifetime ban. Because that is this jurisdiction's criteria for eligibility, it would not be a rejection with the Federation because that system is set already in place. But there may be things in the future as things change where that might change. So if they ever had reason to reject eligibility, we would be notified. Assuming that the applicant has selected to be an applicant to California. If they had selected in the FSBPT system to be an applicant to Texas, we would have no way of knowing that their eligibility was rejected for that jurisdiction, only for California.
Okay. So yeah, you answered my next question, which is it is unique to state.
Right. The system that FSBPT has developed and designed allows them to tailor, if you will, that eligibility requirement for each individual jurisdiction, because we do have some differences from state to state that need to be accounted for.
So other than the foreign educated PT, is there any other applicant who would not qualify for eligibility? Or is that the only type of applicant that we would think?
We have one more that doesn't quite fit, and that's under physical therapy assistant through equivalency. So because there's no CAPTE accreditation that could be transmitted to FSBPT to ensure that eligibility, they would be what we would call a traditional pathway applicant. They wouldn't get the advantage of that process because their application requires much more analysis, if you will, determining if education is equivalent and that kind of thing. So they wouldn't be able to access this portion of the eligibility.
And not being totally familiar with the process for reviewing just the sequence of dates, the timeline for applying for a program. So for the next exam, which it looks like is October, where'd it go? The test date, okay, the next test date is October 27th. So for those applicants for the exam, we're still processing information
The
old way.
traditional pathway.
Traditional way. And then for the following exam date, which will be January 26th, then FSBPT is
That
the new
Should be
route.
available,
Okay.
yes.
Correct.
And have you had any, Jason, have you had any reports, or Sarah, have you had any reports from FSBPT about what they're setting up for a helpline or for I'm lost or something? I didn't get information. Do we know that they're setting up a troubleshooting
So-
I'm not
process?
aware, I don't know.
Part of that system is very much built into the CAPTI accreditation. So one of the responsibilities of the school will now be, during its first cohort, is to actually assign them an FSBPT account when they first enter into school. So it will be CAPTI's accredited schools that will be educating them on that portion of it. So making them more familiar with the federation right from the outgo. So, and then as they get closer to their graduation date, they will then go into the FSBPT account and claim it. Very similar to kind of Breeze, right? So you created an account and then you claimed your license. In this case, you'll be taking that account that the CAPTI accredited education program has created in the federation, and the applicant themselves will be then taking it. And from there, it gets really kind of nice. They get a dashboard that has more information about the process, where they are, not just informationally, but also incrementally. You've registered. Now you need to pay. Now you know those kind of things, and even that dashboard is tailored for each individual jurisdiction. So as it changes for Texas, as it might to California, that's accounted for in the dashboard, and that's a selection that the applicant makes. Once they claim the account, they say where they're going to apply for, what state they're interested in obtaining licensure in, and that actually adapts that dashboard to them. So they'll have that information, and that is. I think this is the beautiful part of the process, before they've even contacted the jurisdiction that they're applying for. And then there's also an opportunity for us to inject, if you will, information into that dashboard that we think is more relevant to our jurisdiction. Another point of opportunity about our application process that they can not just access in our website, but also in their FSBPT dashboard.
And then just one other question. Do we know how many applicants end up applying for licensure after, because they apply to take the exam? Is that also the application for license? That's not the application for licensure at the same, or is it at the same time?
It is.
Yes, right. Well, and it won't necessarily change later, except for they won't need to apply for examination. Currently, there's one application for examination and licensure.
Okay.
It's not a separate process.
So it is going to become a separate process.
No, we
Just
won't
not-
actually be fielding any applications for examination, if you will.
Right, but that will be handled by FSBPT, and then we are only going to be handling the application for licensure.
Correct.
Ideally, yeah.
So currently, I mean, except for the few exceptions. And we're not sure how many of the applicants end up practicing in California versus getting their license because of the process currently, sitting for the exam, getting their California license to practice, but then going someplace else. We're not sure of that.
We don't have any specific numbers, but I can tell you we don't suffer from that particular problem as much as other states do. So because of our guidelines, or because of the deadlines that we have with the 60-day notice and that kind of thing, we have applicants that apply in, as an example, Arizona or Nevada to get their eligibility to the examination, but they intend on applying for licensure in California and residing in California. We don't offer that level of expediency where we would have the converse problem. So there are very few applicants that come to California, take the examination through our eligibility process, and then don't fulfill their or don't complete their licensure application in California. Very few.
How do you know that?
Well, we have some applications that we cancel over a year period of time, and that's a handful. So that's why I say I don't have any specific numbers, but I can tell you, just going through the folders that I see, going through each individual analyst's desks that complete with the issuance of a license versus how many we have to close because they're incomplete applications after a deadline.
And you're talking about applicants from who have gone to school in another state, potentially.
They may be California graduates as well.
Okay, because I believe that I know that at least one school, I know of at least one school where the majority of those students come from out of state and then end up going back to their home state after they complete school and are probably sitting for licensure, application licensure here in California, and then going back home.
And the majority, though, I think I'm familiar with what school you're talking about. The majority of those applicants actually complete their licensure process here, and then use that license to apply by either reciprocity or endorsement in the home state or whatever state they're traveling to.
So the next exam date is in October, and then it moves on to the new system by January. So what are some of the things that, just that you can see, foresee would be the challenge? Because you have pretty much a 2-month communication timeline to get out a pretty fundamental message. And did we start that process yet, or were we finalizing this one thing with the FSBPT to get all those criteria landed on their system so that process is running smooth? And do we have an idea, I'm just thinking out loud, about is this the period in which we will have the least amount of people that we could, at the lack of a better word, experiment with moving them onto the new system? Because if it is the most traffic time, then the 2-month period for getting a message out would be a lot more challenging, and it wouldn't really be utilizing that system that FSBPT has in place right now to that effective level. If you roll out the program, for example, you're looking for the peak of what that program can actually give you. And if you don't if you don't think the whole thing through, then sometimes you can pick the wrong period to do a rollout. And I'm just putting it out there, what are some of the things that you've identified, not on the system side of FSBPT, but from the other side, because previously it was brought that the clients outside of the applicants that are coming to it have a difficult time finding information. So now there's a pretty big message. How are they going to find this information in 2 months?
I think with it starting with the school, that's the first aspect, because the school will be working with the students to get them on board to their account on FSBPT. So the school is familiar with that, and so that will be part of the process. Obviously, we will do our outreach and getting that information out on the website, on social media, to provide this service. I mean, obviously, we are hoping that applicants will take advantage of this, just as our online application system with Breeze. But it's going to be a transition period. So, and as far as your question was, is this a busy period? We're actually coming down from our busiest quarter, so it is a good time. Probably not the most ideal. It's not the least busiest quarter, but we're going that direction. So it'll give us a little bit of time before we hit that big busy time, and trying to get all those people through. So it will give us an opportunity, a trial run, to see what the result is. But we do need to get that information provided. We were awaiting some finalization from FSBPT to get that as much solid, concrete information as we have on the process before distributing it out, rather than giving out maybe incorrect or not the most current information.
So this is what's important to note. It's both an advantage and a disadvantage. So as far as outreach to the applicants that are coming in, we have a limited number of vehicles that we can get that information out to them. We're not really sure who all of our potential applicants are. We have an advantage in California through the California programs, but that's really the beauty of this this process is the brunt of that outreach has already been taken care of for that. So our largest demographic, those California applicants that are CAPTE accredited, are already familiar with this change because the school is so involved with that. We have a smaller demographic of people that are traveling from outside of California into California, graduating from a school in Mississippi, if you will. But again, it's already been taken care of because it's national and CAPTE. Endorsement applicants, the MPTE isn't really a concern. They've already taken this exam as part of their licensure in the state that they're coming from, so this doesn't really touch them. It does touch some, a handful that may have been out of practice for a number of years or something like that. And we're hoping that we can provide that information to them both on our website and through our social media accounts, but we're not aware of who they are and have no other vehicle to reach out to them. But we'll provide that information for them when they seek licensure in California. And then when we can, because this is mostly applicant-driven, use of emails and that kind of thing really isn't appropriate. Licensees don't need to really know about this particular advantage. It doesn't affect them the same way. So social media, information on the website, that kind of thing, and even tutorials or FAQs, once the FSBPT provides us a little bit more information, we'll be using on our websites as well. And hopefully, we'll just be able to hyperlink to things that they've already put up. So here's a tutorial about the dashboard. Here's a tutorial about the process. And it is a quick way of disseminating the information consistently with the way the Federation is putting that information out too. Timing for us, I think Sarah kind of touched on it, couldn't be better. We're coming off of our most busy time of the year. And I think the Federation did a good job at kind of anticipating graduation dates and what would be a good time to make this transition. I want to be very careful about the word transition, though. This is just an alternate way to do it. The old way is still intact. It's still there. And you may have applicants that want to apply to California and for the purposes of PTLA status or physical therapist applicant status, because maybe they want to work before they take the exam, get a little experience, get it under their belt, study in a real world setting before they actually sit for the MPTE. They can still do that. That process has not changed. Everything is still intact. If they want to apply with the state first and then go to the Federation, there's even efficiency in that process because we don't need a back and forth communication that creates that congestion, that difficulty for the applicant. Currently, if they apply with us, they have to then go register with the FSBPT anyway. And then the FSBPT asks us if they're eligible. And then we tell them yes. And then they send an email back to the applicant. Okay, we just heard that you're eligible. Now you need to schedule an appointment to sit. And then the applicant has to send them another communication saying, okay, I want this date. And there's so much back and forth between the triangle of people involved that alternate pathway just says, what is it that you're looking for in your jurisdiction to make them eligible? And we'll check that for you. We're going to check it as part of licensure anyway. I mean, one of the concerns is like a P1E or a certificate of completion of education. We need that before we can issue a license anyway. It's really just a change in the sequence of events through the application process. Eligibility will now be determined by the vendor of the exam. We have that problem now where people apply in Arizona to get eligibility to the next available exam, sit for the exam, apply in California, and when we go to give them eligibility, there's already a score. They've already taken the exam. They've already done alternate pathway. It's just a different type of alternate pathway. So I don't think that we've, and I've brainstormed this a lot, I don't even think I've realized how many efficiencies will be realized by this change. And I've also tried to think of every detriment I could possibly identify, and I haven't come up with a single one.
A question about the process. When we determined eligibility, when we do that, where in the process does background check? Does it sometimes part of that? Does it sometimes occur at the same time, or is it after it?
So there, historically, it used to be part of the consideration for eligibility, but that had to do more with a contractual obligation to the Federation. So it was a concern that if the state of California let someone sit for an exam who they might otherwise deny licensure to, that was an inappropriate exposure to the exam. So we would check their CORI information or criminal offender record information before we would even determine eligibility. Now, during that time, there was also kind of a heightened sense of awareness of security for the exam because they had had a cheating scandal. And so they were really concerned and they locked it down. And that was part of the reason that we were going to be doing that. That's less of a concern now with fixed date testing. So we We don't use the criminal background check as part of determining whether or not they're eligible to sit for the exam.
So neither does FSBPT.
And neither does FSBPT. Really, we're just verifying that they are a graduate from a program and that they meet minimum age requirements and those kind of things. So it's a much more streamlined process.
My last question is, did this alter our contract with the Federation?
Surprisingly, no. It's just a matter of sequence. They are still doing the same things that they were doing before. And in fact, they're not offering any additional service to us, and they're not incurring any additional cost. I think that they see that this is a process that any additional cost would be offset by the efficiency it creates. Moving to this more automated system not only kind of helps out us as the jurisdiction, but it helps the applicant at that point. It's a much more efficient process, and I think it keeps better track of things like eligibility and registration and communication. So when an applicant has applied with us and also registered with the Federation, and we have not made them eligible, or any state for that matter has not made them eligible, it holds things up. And now that will be readily accessible to the applicant to either know why or if it even has been on their own dashboard.
So our criteria for exam eligibility hasn't changed, hasn't altered, and it consists as a clause in the contract.
Correct.
Currently, a student applicant pays the fee for the exam to the state, to the board, or does that fee, is that separated and they pay their fee directly to FSBPT?
Examination fees are paid directly to FSBPT.
Okay.
I don't have anything else on this, so if you are ready to move on.
Any public comment on the alternate pathways? Okay. Going to move on to agenda item number 22.
The licensing maintenance program report, obviously there's a new name and new statistics provided. The format's changed. Those are the major points. As far as everything is going, it's a little bit different feeling with licensing. Not as much change has occurred that's so substantive. There's a lot of maybe process changes for the system, but in comparison to like applications, it's minor and we're addressing it all internally. For the most part, we are encouraging people to use the Breeze system. And as noted, that there are some renewal issues that arise, and we are dealing with those as they come up. Oftentimes, it's resolving some data entry issues that we have to just fix on our end. And we also have the opportunity to assist licensees when they're having trouble logging in, and it's very helpful if licensees provide screenshots because sometimes it's just a matter of getting the information matched up, because we do have the opportunity as staff to look up accounts on the back end of the system, and oftentimes it's just information entry, and we can assist licensees with that. Continuing competency, when we get the positions filled for applications, we'll resume continuing competency audits. That process has already started. Staff is looking at updating the program to get started on actually beginning audits again. And then if there's any questions. Oh, I do have one correction on the statistics. On the PT year-to-date inactive licenses, it's actually $12.99, not $13.99. And it's still a decrease, but it's 17% rather than 11%.
So I have a question about the continuing competency audits. Does Breeze have the capability of tracking which licensees are in need of completing continuing competency credits before?
Yeah, we can use Breeze to conduct the audits. We're still developing that. There are certain capabilities that exist, whether or not they are available to us or if it needs to be an added configuration. We're working the details out on that, but we definitely can identify who's been selected for an audit, who's failed an audit. All of those system identifiers are in there, and that was the same for Legacy.
Thank you.
And continuing competency is also a compliance question on the renewal. So a licensee has to attest to their compliance before that they can renew.
Sarah, I had a quick question. So with the creation of the application services and licensing services branches, help me understand, which one of those two is ultimately going to be the one to mail that little license to our applicant? Is that still falling under the application, or is that already into the licensing?
The initial license or their license?
The initial
The
license,
initial,
yeah.
that's initiated by the applications program.
Okay.
So anything after that initial license issuance, that moves into license
Licensing,
maintenance.
got it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Which
thank
can
you.
be kind of confusing because with the Breeze system, all of the transactions are referred to as applications. So your application for renewal, but that falls for us under license maintenance.
Right.
It was interesting in the development. It was like
And-
applications for what?
And because of Breeze, that in and of itself is also an automated process now. So as soon as an analyst in the applications unit has determined that all deficiencies have been fulfilled, that gets included into a batch job that night, and those are transmitted to a vendor who prints out that little certificate and mails it out. And so it's much more expedient in reception, because where before we would do it as a bulk and we would sit down and say, okay, all these applications are now ready for licensure, and we would do groups, forward that on to EDD to be printed on an old antique, black and white printing machine and have it sent out. It could take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. And now with Breeze, the automated process, once those deficiencies are met, the system runs that, transmits it to the vendor, and now you're talking about 48 to 72 hours.